My name is Rachel Donovan, and I am the woman who built a business with her own hands. I gave my husband a place in it. I gave my closest friend a career in it. I trusted both of them with everything I had spent years creating. And then one morning I walked through the front door of my own company and found out they had removed me from it entirely. But I am not here to tell you a story about revenge. I am here to tell you what happens when everything is stripped away and what you find underneath. Portland, Oregon. November. A cold gray morning with rain already moving across the city. I parked my car in the same spot I had parked in for 11 years. I walked toward the building with my name on the glass. Donovan Creative Solutions. 11 years. 11 years of early mornings before anyone else arrived. Late nights after everyone had gone home. Weekends spent on proposals that no one asked me to write. Vacations I postponed for one more quarter, one more deadline, one more push. I had started the company in a single rented room. One desk, one laptop, and a belief, stubborn and quiet, that I could build something real. That morning, the company occupied 3 full floors, 48 employees, annual revenue above $4 million. I pressed the elevator button. The receptionist at the front desk looked up and looked away. I noticed that. I pressed my key card against the reader at the elevator. It did not work. I noticed that too. And then a security guard I had hired 2 years earlier walked toward me and said, quietly, almost apologetically, "Ms. Donovan, Mr. Donovan is waiting for you in the conference room." My own husband, sending security to bring me in my own building. Daniel Donovan, the man I married 14 years ago, the man who was out of work 8 years ago when I brought him in and gave him a role. The man I promoted to marketing director, then made co-owner. Because I loved him. Because I believed in him. Because I thought that was what you did for the person you had chosen to spend your life with. I walked to the conference room. I opened the door. Daniel was seated at the head of the table, the chair I usually sat in. Next to him was Melissa Park, my best friend, the woman I had trusted with our finances for 6 years, our chief financial officer. And beside her, a lawyer I had never seen before. Daniel slid a set of documents across the table without looking up. "Rachel," he said, "it would be better for everyone if you just sign these." I picked up the papers. I read the first page, then the second. It was a buyout agreement, a document designed to push me out of my own company. My shares, the shares I had built from nothing, were valued at far below market rate. "What is this?" I asked. Daniel leaned back. "The company needs a new direction." "A new direction? Your vision isn't enough for where we're going." I looked at Melissa. She was staring at the table. "Melissa." She raised her eyes. "Just barely." I said nothing else to her. There was nothing to say in that room. I placed the documents back on the table. "I am not signing anything." The lawyer cleared his throat. "Ms. Donovan, under the terms of the shareholder agreement." "I know what the shareholder agreement says." I stood. I had it written. I walked out. My steps were even. My hands were still. I made it to my car. I sat down. I gripped the steering wheel. And I allowed myself, just once, just for a moment, to close my eyes and feel exactly how much that had hurt. Then I picked up my phone and called Margaret Chen, the most experienced business litigation attorney in Portland. When she answered, I said only this: "Margaret, I need help. And I think it's serious." A pause. Then, "How soon can you be here?" "I'm already driving." Margaret Chen's office was downtown, along the Willamette River. She was 60 years old. Short silver hair. Precise, unhurried eyes. And the kind of stillness that only comes from decades of sitting across from people in crisis and knowing exactly what to do next. I told her everything. The full history of the company. How I started it. when Daniel came in, and how I had structured his ownership, Melissa's role, and how long she had been CFO. What happened that morning, the security guard, the conference room, the documents, Daniel's face when I refused to sign. Margaret listened without interrupting once. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she asked her first question. The original founding documents for the company. Where are they? At home. In my personal safe. Good. She picked up her pen. The original intellectual property registrations? All in my name. A small, careful smile crossed her face. And Daniel became co-owner. When exactly? 3 years after he joined. 5 years ago. Why did you make him co-owner? That question settled in the room differently than the others. Because he was my husband, I said. Because I thought it was right. Margaret wrote something. Then she set down her pen and looked at me directly. Rachel, in the last year or two, did you ever feel that something in the company's finances was being handled in a way that didn't sit right with you? I paused. And in that pause, things came back to me that I had pushed aside. Quarterly reports that arrived later than they should have. Meetings I was told about after they had already happened. A major client contract renewed without my signature, explained away as an administrative oversight. Small things. Things I had chosen to believe were nothing. Maybe, I said quietly. Margaret nodded slowly. Then this is not just a personal betrayal. What do you mean? I mean we have real work to do. She opened a fresh folder. And I think we should start immediately. Outside, the rain had picked up against the windows. Inside, something had shifted. I had walked into that office feeling like a woman who had lost everything. I walked out feeling like a woman with somewhere to go. The next 3 weeks were the hardest I had lived through in a long time. Daniel changed the locks on our house. My house, the one I had bought 6 years before he ever moved in. He had no legal right to do that. He did it anyway. I moved into a hotel 2 miles from the office I was no longer allowed to enter. Several employees stopped responding to my messages. Whether out of fear or instruction, I never knew. It did not matter. People make choices in moments of pressure, and those choices tell you everything you need to know. Melissa posted something on social media. She did not use my name. She did not have to. Some people, she wrote, let personal ego destroy what a team spent years building. It was read by people who knew exactly who she meant. Portland is not a large city. Stories move through it quickly and completely. Some people I had considered friends kept their distance. Politely. With the particular discomfort of people who are not sure which side will win. There are moments in a crisis when you stop counting what you have lost and start counting who is still there. My count was small, but every single person in it was someone I would trust with anything. Margaret had moved immediately. She commissioned a full forensic accounting review of the company's financial records, 5 years back, every account, every transaction, every transfer. It was slow. It was expensive. And it was the most important thing she could have done. 3 weeks later, she called me in. Her desk was covered in documents when I arrived. Organized, tabbed, annotated in her careful handwriting. Sit down, Rachel. Iset. Are you ready for this? Tell me. She placed the first page in front of me. Over the past 2 years, Melissa made a series of transfers out of company operating accounts. Each individual amount was small enough not to trigger automatic review. Structured that way deliberately. She paused. The total is $370,000. I looked at the page. I did not speak. And Daniel? She placed the second page down. Daniel entered into a private financial arrangement with your largest client, without your knowledge, without board approval, and without any record in the company's books. The income from that arrangement was redirected into a separate LLC, registered only in his name. Set up 14 months ago. How much? Confirmed over 18 months, just above $800,000. The room went very quiet. I looked out the window at the river. A boat was moving slowly downstream, patient and unhurried. They needed me gone, I said. Not as a question. Yes. And that buyout agreement, the one they put in front of you that morning, contained a clause. If you had signed it, you would have permanently waived your right to take any legal action against the company or its officers. That clause. That single page I had refused to sign without reading. I thought about what would have happened if I had done what they expected. If I had been too shocked, too hurt, too overwhelmed to think clearly in that room. We have enough to move forward, Margaret said. Civil fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and, depending on how the criminal review develops, potentially more serious charges for Daniel. I took a slow breath. What do we do now? She closed the folder. Now we let them know what we have. And we watch what they do next. Before the formal legal process began, something happened that I had not anticipated. One evening I was alone in my hotel room when there was a knock at the door. I opened it. James Whitfield, our company's longest-standing client. 10 years. His construction firm had signed with me when the company was 2 people in a single room, when I had no track record and no guarantee of anything except my own commitment to the work. He stood in the doorway, looking serious. James, what are you doing here? I need to talk to you. Can I come in? He sat down across from me. He did not waste time. My CFO flagged some irregularities in a contract renewal from last year. When I looked into it, I found out that Daniel had entered into a side arrangement involving my company, without my knowledge and without my authorization. I nodded. It's part of the investigation. James was quiet for a moment. Then he looked at me in a way that I will not forget. Rachel, I have been your client for 10 years. Not because your rates were the lowest. Not because your proposals were the most polished. Because in 10 years of working together, you never once told me something that wasn't true. I could not find words immediately. Whatever happens with all of this, he said, when you start something new, I will be your first call. He stood. He shook my hand. He left. I sat in that room for a long time after the door closed. Outside, Portland was dark and wet and ordinary. And inside me, for the first time in weeks, something small and solid had returned. Not hope exactly. Something quieter than hope. A sense that the foundation was still there. That no one had actually taken the thing that mattered most. The legal process moved through the following weeks with the methodical pace of all serious legal matters. Margaret was relentless and precise. Daniel's attorney pushed back, raised procedural objections, requested extensions. Melissa's representation took a different approach, quieter, more defensive, focused on minimizing individual liability. None of it changed what the document showed. Forensic accounting does not negotiate. Numbers sit where they were placed.
Transfert livre permanent travail.
And the LLC that Daniel had constructed so carefully, the one he believed was invisible, became the foundation of everything that followed. 6 weeks in, Daniel's attorney requested a private settlement meeting. Margaret called me as soon as she hung up with them.
They want to talk, she said.
What does that mean? It means they have seen the full picture. And they are scared. For the first time since that November morning, I felt something release in my chest. Not triumph. Not anger satisfied. Just the particular relief of knowing that the truth was no longer something I was carrying alone. The negotiation took place over 3 separate sessions across 2 weeks. I attended all of them. I sat beside Margaret, and I did not speak unless she indicated. I had learned something in the months prior. In rooms like these, silence is not weakness. Silence is the clearest possible signal that you are not desperate, that you can wait, that the other side is the one with the urgent need to resolve things. Daniel looked different in those rooms than the man I had known. The ease was gone. That comfortable, unexamined confidence that things would arrange themselves in his favor. It had been replaced by something I had genuinely never seen on his face before. Uncertainty.
It was a small thing.
He would not have wanted me to notice it. I noticed it. His team tried several arguments across the 3 sessions. They questioned the methodology of the forensic review. They argued that the side arrangement with James Whitfield's company had been within Daniel's authority as co-owner. They suggested that Melissa's account activity represented administrative errors rather than deliberate fraud. Margaret addressed each one with the same measured patience. She did not raise her voice. She did not show frustration. She simply placed the relevant documents on the table and let them speak. By the morning of the 3rd session, the arguments had stopped. Daniel's attorney arrived without the certainty of the previous meetings. He sat down, opened a folder, and put a revised settlement offer on the table. The terms were not everything I had lost. They never are in cases like these. But they were real. They were documented. And they allowed me to move forward cleanly, without ongoing litigation, without years of appeal, without the particular exhaustion of a fight that never ends. I looked at Margaret. She gave a small nod. I signed. Daniel surrendered his ownership stake in Donovan Creative Solutions entirely and permanently. The financial recovery addressed the majority of what had been taken. His side LLC was dissolved as part of the agreement. Melissa repaid in full every dollar identified in the forensic review. She provided a written statement, carefully worded, as these things always are, that nonetheless made the essential facts clear. She had been aware of the arrangement. She had participated in it. And she had been part of the effort to remove me before I discovered what was happening. I read that statement once. I put it in a folder. I closed the folder. I did not open it again. The afternoon the final documents were signed, Margaret and I stood outside on the sidewalk. The November air was sharp and cold. The same kind of cold as the morning everything came apart. "How do you feel?" she asked. I thought about it honestly. "Tired," I said. "And ready." She nodded. In my experience, that is exactly the right combination. We shook hands. I walked to my car. I sat for a moment before I turned the key. Then I drove across the river to a small coffee shop on the east side, a place I used to go in the early mornings before the company grew large enough to consume my entire day. I ordered coffee. I sat by the window. And for the first time in months, I did nothing else. I did not plan. I did not calculate. I did not brace myself for what was coming. I simply sat in the quiet and let it be quiet. 6 months later, I opened a new company, Donovan Consulting Group. The name was a choice, not a default. Donovan was my name. It had always been my name before the marriage, during it, and after. I was not reclaiming it. I was simply being clear, for the first time, that it had never belonged to anyone else. The new office was smaller. 1 floor. 12 employees on the first day. Simple furniture, careful budget, no excess of any kind. It was the leanest operation I had run in years. It also felt more like a real company than anything I had been part of in a long time. James Whitfield signed the first contract on opening day. He brought his full account. He did not ask for a reduced rate or a loyalty discount. He sat across from me, signed the paperwork, and said 4 words. "Let's get back to work." For other clients came within the first 30 days. All former clients of the original company. All people who had watched what happened and drawn their own conclusions, not from anything I said publicly, because I said very little publicly, but from their own experience of who had actually done the work, built the relationships, and kept the commitments over the years. They were not choosing a company. They were choosing a person. That distinction mattered more to me than I expected. By the end of the first quarter, the team had grown to 18. By the end of the first year, the company was profitable, not dramatically, not in the way that makes headlines, but steadily and honestly, and entirely on terms I controlled. I heard very little about Daniel in those months. What reached me came through the natural movement of information in a connected professional community, not through any deliberate effort on my part. The company he had taken was not doing well. The clients who had stayed were beginning to leave. One by one. Quietly. The way clients always leave when they realize that the value they were paying for was never in the structure or the brand. It was in the specific person who built it and ran it and showed up for them consistently over years. Without that person, what remained was a name on a building and a lease on 3 floors. I did not feel satisfaction about that. I want to be honest about that because I think it matters. What I felt was something much simpler. A kind of settled recognition that the world had not, in fact, rewarded the wrong things. That what had been built carefully and honestly had proved more durable than what had been taken carelessly and kept through deception. That was enough. There is something no one prepares you for when you go through something like this. Everyone prepares you for the pain. The pain is real, and it deserves acknowledgement. The grief of a marriage that turned out to be something other than what you believed. The loss of a friendship that you had considered permanent. The particular disorientation of having your professional identity questioned in public by people you had trusted. All of that is real. All of it takes time. None of it resolves on a schedule. But what no one tells you about is what comes after. After the legal process ends and the documents are signed. After the professional community has moved on to the next story. After the people who stepped back have either returned or haven't, and you've made your peace with both outcomes. What comes after, if you have done the hard internal work alongside the external fight, is clarity. Not happiness exactly. Not the triumphant feeling that movies suggest.
Clarity.
A precise and undecorated understanding of who you are, what you are capable of, and what you are no longer willing to accept. I understood things about myself after that year that I could not have understood any other way. I understood that I had given co-ownership of my company to someone who had not earned it, not because I was foolish, but because I had confused love with obligation and generosity with strategy.
Those are human mistakes.
They are worth understanding without shame, because shame keeps you from learning, and learning is the only useful thing you can do with a painful experience. I understood that I had ignored signals I should not have ignored, not because I lacked intelligence, but because I wanted a particular version of my life to be true, and I let that desire filter what I allowed myself to see. That too is human. That too is worth understanding clearly. And I understood, most importantly, that none of those mistakes had cost me the thing that actually mattered. They had not cost me myself. Everything else, the company, the money, the years of effort, the house, the marriage, those things had been taken or damaged or lost. And the recovery of some of them, through Margaret's work and the legal process, had been meaningful and necessary. But the thing that no one had been able to take, the thing that Daniel had never had access to regardless of what his name said on the paperwork, the thing that Melissa could not redirect into any account or transfer into any LLC, was what I knew, what I had built inside myself over 11 years of actual work. The understanding of how to see a problem clearly and solve it honestly. The knowledge of what it takes to earn someone's trust and keep it across a decade. The capacity to sit in a hotel room with nothing left and decide, quietly and without drama, to begin again. That could not be stolen. It had simply been waiting for me to recognize it. On a Thursday evening in late autumn, almost exactly 1 year after the morning my keycard stopped working, Margaret called. "The first year numbers are out," she said. "I heard they were good. We worked for them." "I know you did." A pause. How does it feel? Looking back at all of it, I was standing at the window of my new office. The Willamette River was visible in the distance. The last of the daylight was leaving the sky over the West Hills. "Honestly," I said, "it feels like it happened to a version of me who is slightly less certain of herself than I am now." Margaret was quiet for a moment. That might be the most useful thing anyone has said to me all week. After we said goodbye, I stayed at the window. I thought about the conference room, the documents on the table, the security guard walking toward me across the lobby, the hotel room, the forensic reports spread across Margaret's desk, James Whitfield standing in my doorway looking serious and saying what he said. I thought about every person who had stepped back and every person who had stayed. I thought about what I had lost and what losing it had forced me to understand about what I actually had. And then I turned off the light in my office. I took the elevator down. I stepped out into the cool Portland evening. I walked to my car. I drove home, to my own home, on my own terms, through a life that was entirely and without question my own. And somewhere on that drive, I thought about something that I've thought about many times since. The people who build their lives on deception do not collapse all at once. It happens gradually, piece by piece, as the truth works its way into every corner of what they constructed. It always does. Not because the world is perfectly just, not because honesty is always immediately rewarded, but because lies require constant attention, constant maintenance, a continuous expenditure of energy just to keep them standing. And the truth requires nothing. It simply exists. It simply waits. And the people who stand on it, who keep working, who keep building, who refuse to become smaller because of what was done to them, those people do not always win on the schedule they would choose. But what they build lasts. What they earn is real. And who they become through the process of surviving it honestly, that is something no one can ever take a single piece of. I learned all of that the hardest possible way. and I would not trade one day of it. Not one.